We're following breaking news out of rural Missouri tonight. A house fire in the Ozarks has turned into a homicide investigation. Authorities say two adults, Danny and Kathy Freeman, were found shot inside their burned home. Two teenage girls are missing. Ashley Freeman and Lauria Bible were inside the house earlier that night but have not been located. Investigators say there is no sign the girls died in the fire, and a search is now underway.
It began with fire. On the night of December 30th, 1999, a remote farmhouse in the Missouri Ozarks erupted into flames so fierce they could be seen from miles away. When firefighters finally reached the property, they expected to find a tragic accident. Instead, they discovered execution-style gunshots, missing children, and a crime scene so horrifying that investigators would later call it one of the most disturbing unsolved cases in Missouri history. 4 people lived in that house. Only 2 bodies were found. 16 years old, Ashley Freeman, and her best friend, also a teenager, Lauria Bible, vanished. No footprints leading away, no ransom note, no witnesses, just blood, fire, and silence. And years later, a convicted killer would make a chilling claim: "I know exactly what happened to those girls." This is the story of the Freeman family disappearance. Before the fire, before the violence, before the disappearance, the Freeman household was quiet. Danny Freeman, a former police officer, lived off the grid in rural Piqua, Missouri, a small town already fading into abandonment due to environmental disaster. His wife, Kathy Freeman, kept the home running, and their daughter Ashley was counting down the days to the new millennium. Excited, restless, innocent. That night, Ashley's best friend Lauria Bible came over to spend the night. It was supposed to be a celebration. The year 2000 was just one day away. Neither girl would ever see it. When firefighters arrived, they knew immediately something was wrong. The fire was too intense, the destruction too complete, and inside the ruins, they found Danny and Kathy Freeman. Both had been shot in the head. The fire hadn't killed them. It had been set to erase them. But even worse, something didn't add up. There were no remains of the 2 girls. No bones, no clothing, no sign they ever burned. Ashley Freeman and Lauria Bible were gone. From the very beginning, the investigation faltered. Local authorities quickly jumped to a conclusion. Danny Freeman did it. They claimed he murdered his wife, kidnapped the girls, and burned the house down before fleeing. Case closed. Except there was one fatal problem. Danny Freeman was already dead, and ballistic evidence showed the bullets could not have been self-inflicted. But investigators ignored it. Why? Because Danny Freeman had a reputation. Danny Freeman wasn't well liked. He was a former police officer who didn't trust law enforcement. He believed the government was corrupt, that authorities were watching him, that someone wanted him silenced, and in the eyes of investigators that made him dangerous. So when the fire happened, they took the easy answer. They didn't treat the site as a kidnapping. They treated it as a domestic murder-suicide. Crucial evidence was destroyed. Witnesses weren't interviewed. And for years, Ashley Freeman and Lauria Bible were written off as dead. But the families never believed it. Ashley's grandparents, Lauria's parents, they knew something was wrong. No bodies, no remains, no proof. They begged investigators to keep searching. They were ignored. For nearly 2 decades, the case went cold, until a name resurfaced, a name tied to murder, torture, and sexual violence, a name that would change everything: Robert Craig Cox. Robert Craig Cox was already a monster, a convicted kidnapper, a rapist, a suspected serial killer. He had abducted women, sexually assaulted them, and bragged about crimes no one could prove. But there was something else. In 2019, Cox made a stunning confession. He claimed he knew exactly what happened to Ashley Freeman and Lauria Bible. He described details never released to the public. And then he said something that sent chills through investigators. They begged for their lives. Cox told investigators he wasn't alone that night, that multiple men invaded the Freeman home, that Danny and Kathy were executed, that the girls were taken alive. What happened next was far worse than anyone imagined. For the first time in 20 years, the case was reopened. The FBI confirmed the original investigation was deeply flawed. Evidence was mishandled. The girls were very likely abducted, and Robert Craig Cox, he knew too much. Where did the girls go? Who helped Cox? And why was the truth buried for so long? The answers lie in lies, corruption, and a killer who may never fully confess. And this story is far from over. Investigators now believe the attack happened fast, too fast. Danny Freeman likely never had time to react. The door opened, or was forced open, and gunfire followed almost immediately. Kathy Freeman was shot where she stood. Danny Freeman tried to move, tried to reach for something, but never made it. The girls were still alive. Ashley and Lauria watched their parents die, and then they were taken. There were no footprints leaving the house, no drag marks, no blood trail, which meant only one thing. The girls left in a vehicle. Someone planned this. This was not panic. This was not random violence. This was an abduction. The fire wasn't rage. It was strategy. Accelerants were later suspected, though never properly tested. The goal was simple: destroy the crime scene, erase evidence, delay discovery, and it worked. By the time firefighters arrived, fingerprints, DNA, and ballistic clues were gone. The killers had hours. Instead of chasing suspects, authorities chose a narrative. Danny Freeman, paranoid, anti-government, isolated. A man they didn't trust. They labeled him the killer. They stopped looking for the girls, and Missouri quietly buried the case. But the families would not stay silent. They demanded answers. They asked one simple question: where are the bodies? There were none. No ashes, no bone fragments, nothing. You don't cremate two children completely in a house fire. And deep down, everyone knew it. In small towns, secrets don't disappear. They ferment. People whispered about strange men in the area, about vehicles seen late at night, about screams, but no one spoke officially. Fear kept mouths shut. Robert Craig Cox was drifting through the Midwest. He had no permanent address, no stable job, no conscience. By the late 1990s, Cox had already abducted women, raped them, and tortured them. He enjoyed control, and he enjoyed fear. Cox's known crimes followed a pattern: abduction, isolation, psychological torment. He didn't kill quickly. He wanted his victims to understand what was happening. That pattern matters, because Ashley and Lauria disappeared together. While in prison, Cox talked too much. He bragged about crimes police couldn't prove. He hinted at murders with no bodies. And he made one claim again and again: they can't charge me if there's no evidence. That statement would come back to haunt him. When Cox finally mentioned the Freeman case, something felt wrong. He knew details that were never public: the order of events, the fire's purpose, the girls' reactions, details only someone there could know. Cox said he wasn't alone, that other men helped him. Men with families, men with jobs, men who blended in. He refused to name them. Not out of fear, out of power. The FBI confirmed what families suspected for years. The fire was arson. The girls were abducted. The case should never have been closed. Missouri had failed 2 children. Cox suggested the girls were driven across state lines. Remote land, abandoned structures, places no one goes, places where screams don't matter. When asked why he was talking now, Cox smiled. Because I still never get out. And then he added, and because no one can prove it. For the first time, authorities admitted failure. The case was reopened. Searches resumed, but time had erased much. And Cox, he still controlled the truth. Every dig raised hope. Every empty patch crushed it. Years had passed. Evidence decays, but secrets don't. Are Ashley Freeman and Lauria Bible still out there? Or did Robert Craig Cox take their final moments to his grave? The truth is closer than ever, and still just out of reach. After the gunshots, after the fire was set, the girls were moved quickly. Investigators believe Ashley Freeman and Lauria Bible were forced into a vehicle within minutes of the attack. Not dragged, not carried, commanded. They were alive, and whoever took them knew the area well enough to vanish without leaving a trace. Abducting 2 children at once is rare. Dangerous. It requires confidence or help. Cox later admitted something critical. One of them wouldn't stop crying. That detail was never released publicly, and it suggested something worse. Time passed after the abduction. There were no reports of screaming, no traffic stops, no witnesses, which means the girls were subdued quickly. This was not a spontaneous crime. This was rehearsed. Robert Craig Cox didn't operate in isolation. Investigators uncovered a circle of associates, men with criminal histories, unstable employment, and a shared distrust of authority. Some lived within driving distance of the Freeman home. Some vanished shortly after the crime. None have ever been charged. Cox hinted at an intermediate location, a place where they stopped, a place away from roads, away from people. He never named it, but investigators believe this stop explains something critical. Why no witnesses ever saw the girls? Cox specialized in psychological dominance. He didn't rely on constant violence. He relied on fear, on making victims believe resistance was pointless. That strategy allowed him to control multiple victims at once, including children. Some investigators believe the girls were transferred to another vehicle, a clean vehicle, one unconnected to the fire. If true, it explains why searches around the Freeman property found nothing, and why the trail died instantly. Cox suggested the girls were taken out of Missouri. Why? Because jurisdictions complicate investigations. Because confusion buys time. Because once hours pass, hope fades. Cox didn't confess out of guilt. He confessed out of control. He knew exactly what investigators wanted, and he gave them just enough to keep them coming back. Every statement Cox made followed a pattern. Reveal a shocking detail, withhold the final answer, watch investigators react. Power to him was information, and he enjoyed every second of it. Naming accomplices would end the game. It would give closure, and Cox does not give closure. As long as the girls remain missing, he remains relevant. Prosecutors face a brutal reality. No bodies, no physical evidence, a crime scene destroyed. Even with Cox's statements, a conviction is uncertain. When families were briefed, They heard details no parent should ever hear, but they also heard something else. Confirmation. Their daughters were taken, not forgotten. Years of searching followed, but Cox never confirmed locations. Every search was a guess, every failure another wound. Time is on Cox's side. He is already serving life. There is no incentive to finish the story, and he knows it. The Freeman Bible case is not closed. It breathes, it waits, and it haunts every investigation that came too late. Where are Ashley, Freeman and Lauria Bible? Until that question is answered, justice remains unfinished. When the FBI took control, they did something local investigators never did. They started over. No assumptions, no shortcuts, just time, facts, and uncomfortable questions. And slowly, a new timeline emerged. The murders and abduction occurred within a tight window. Between late evening and shortly after midnight, that meant something critical. The perpetrators knew exactly when to strike. They weren't guessing, they were watching. Only a handful of people knew Lauria Bible was spending the night. That detail narrowed the suspect pool dramatically. This was not random. Someone had inside knowledge. Cox had the means. He had the history, and crucially, he had the opportunity. Cell phone data was limited in 1999, but witness timelines placed Cox within driving distance that night, close enough. Investigators identified multiple men connected to Cox, men who had histories of violence, men who suddenly changed routines after December 1999, men who were questioned briefly, then released. No follow-ups, no surveillance, no pressure. In rural communities, fear is currency. People knew something, they just didn't know who would hear them speak, and silence felt safer than truth. Behavioral experts noted disturbing consistencies. Cox targeted vulnerability. He escalated control gradually. He enjoyed manipulation more than violence itself. And most telling of all, he revisited crimes mentally, over and over. That's why he talked. Cox didn't accidentally confess. He inserted himself. Just like killers often return to crime scenes, Cox returned to the story because attention was the reward. By blaming Danny Freeman, authorities protected themselves. Admitting error would mean admitting negligence. So they doubled down, and 2 missing girls faded into paperwork. The crime scene was destroyed within days. Ash was removed. Debris hauled away. Soil disturbed. Any remaining evidence was gone by the time doubt emerged. It was too late. Miraculously, some items survived: fragments, photographs, handwritten notes, enough to confirm what families already knew: the girls were taken. Even now, the legal hurdles remain enormous. Without remains, without a full confession, without cooperative witnesses, justice teeters on probability, not certainty. Cox knows something prosecutors need, and as long as he withholds it, he controls the narrative. Not because he's free, but because he's remembered. Time has stolen many things, but not resolve. The families continue to push because closure isn't a luxury. It's a right. This case isn't just about a killer. It's about systems that failed, about voices ignored, and about what happens when assumptions replace investigation. Somewhere, the truth remains, waiting, buried not just in land, but in fear. After decades of denial, missteps, and silence, investigators now agree on one central truth: Ashley Freeman and Lauria Bible were abducted alive, transported away from the Freeman property, and never returned. The fire was not the crime, it was the distraction. There is no evidence the girls were specifically targeted before that night. Investigators believe the crime escalated. What began as an attack on Danny Freeman became something far worse when two children were present, a decision made in minutes, a consequence carried forever. Cox never gave a full confession, but he gave enough to confirm abduction, enough to confirm accomplices, enough to confirm survival beyond the fire. And then he stopped, because control was more valuable than truth. Investigators believe at least two other men were involved, men who knew rural roots, men who trusted Cox, men who have never spoken and likely never will. Time is the enemy of truth. Years erase landmarks, animals scatter remains, weather reshapes land. If the girls were taken deep into remote terrain, recovery may never happen. Not because investigators failed again, but because the clock ran out. Yes, but only under one condition. If Cox names accomplices, if one person breaks, if one secret surfaces, without that, justice remains just out of reach. The families continue to speak, to demand, to remember. Because silence is how crimes disappear, and they refuse to let that happen. This case forced Missouri to confront a painful truth, that sometimes the greatest damage is done after the crime, by indifference, by assumptions, by closing a case too soon. The Freeman family disappearance is a warning that no case is truly closed without proof. That missing children deserve relentless pursuit, and that monsters rely on systems failing. Ashley Freeman was curious and brave. Lauria Bible was loyal and kind. They were not just victims, they were daughters, friends, children who deserved to grow up. Cox still listens, still follows coverage, still knows he holds the last pieces. And one day, he may decide to speak again. Until that day, one question remains unanswered. Where are Ashley Freeman and Lauria Bible? This story is unfinished, but it is not forgotten, and as long as someone remembers their names, Ashley Freeman, Lauria Bible, the truth still has a chance to surface. If you want more gripping true crime stories like this, hit like and subscribe and never miss a case.